Chaos, pure chaos in the Youssouf Fofana move to Milan. First, reports suggested that personal terms had been agreed with the player, possibly even a price tag agreement with Monaco, and the completion of the deal was only 48 hours away. Then reports of two massive clubs stepping into the race for the player, dragging the price tag of the player to double of what Milan was hoping to pay. What's the latest on this transfer? I'll break it down for you. And the Strahina Pavlovic deal could have gotten equally complicated if it wasn't for the player reportedly rejecting the offer that he got from a major La Liga club. And is Malik Thiaw's time at Milan now done with a possible move to the Premier League? These are some of the profiles we're going to be looking at in today's episode of Rumor or Real. Now, at the time of you guys watching this video, the Youssouf Fofana move to Milan could still very much be done, but this is a pattern of behavior by the Milan management that has to be pointed out. Well, a few days ago, Nicolo Schira tweeted out that Milan had found an agreement in principle with the player. There was a contract, a 4-year deal that was agreed with Fofana's entourage. There was reporting that the salary that was agreed was around 3 million euros net, and the only thing that was left was an agreement between Milan and Monaco. And it's kind of subjective to say the only thing left, because with Milan, that's pretty much the most important thing. When a player sees that AC Milan is approaching them, that player is playing at a smaller club, a lot of the time seeing the name of Milan, the history of Milan, the players are pretty much willing to make that move. So that's not really the tough part. Finding an agreement on salaries at this point in time doesn't seem to be the tough part for Milan. The tough part is finding that negotiation or finding that agreement with the parent club. Early reports suggested that Monaco's asking price was around 25 million. That's what Milan had to pay. But from the very get-go, there was an understanding that a negotiation on this price was very much possible because the player had entered the final year of his contract and he had informed the club on top of that I will be leaving. I'm not going to be re-signing, so you better sell me this summer transfer window to cash out on me. So that initial price tag was set about 25 million. Now, Matteo Moretto's reporting 2 weeks ago, sometime around July 10th, clearly said Milan doesn't want to go past 12 to 15 million euros for this player. And looking at it now, it sounds like that was a fairly accurate number. Now, Milan's initial offer was for 12 million for this player. It was pretty quickly rejected by Monaco, but then there was some reports saying that maybe Monaco will do a deal around 18 million euros. So they have lowered their expectation from 25 million first to 20 million, and now they might do a deal at 18 million. But what happened while this offer at 12 million was rejected by Monaco is that there was more than enough limelight shining around this player. And I'm sure the scouting networks and departments of other clubs also started to take note of his expiring contract. In the last video, I did talk about how Atletico Madrid had talked to Fofana's entourage to see if he would be open to a move to La Liga. And now reports are coming out that it's not just Atletico Madrid. There's also Manchester United that are now interested in the player. When it comes to the arrival of these two teams, heavyweights in terms of their spending abilities, Monaco takes note of that, sees that someone like Manchester United is involved, puts that Premier League luxury tax on top and says, hey, now we don't want 25 million for this player. We actually now want 35 million for him. So this Milan side that was trying to get a lowly deal done at 12 million now is looking at a price tag 3 times of that. And this demand of Monaco's at 35 million was reported by Gianluca Di Marzio. Soon after the reporting of 35 million came out, Daniele Longo, another reliable Serie A journalist, comes out and says, hey, actually, it's not their demand. They're not asking for 35 million. As a matter of fact, Milan has sent an updated offer, some around the 14 million euro mark, plus bonuses on top, and they're now awaiting a response from Monaco for this latest offer. Now, what comes out of this situation, we're gonna have to wait to see. But I think one thing can be said. If Monaco's opening requirement, their sale price for this player was around 25 million euros, going at an offer of 12 million for a player of this quality just because he's in the last year of his contract seems a little bit silly. Here's what an opening bid in a negotiation can do. You can do one of two things. You can either invite the seller to the negotiation table in good faith, give them a realistic, respectable offer, or you can make an offer that turns off the seller to such an extent that they don't really see you seriously and they don't really want to work with you. As an agent in a different industry, I have over a decade of experience in negotiation when it comes to these big numbers. And one thing that can fairly be said is that if you lowball a seller too much, you risk them not taking you seriously and dragging out the negotiation for a lot longer, waiting for somebody else to step in. And you kind of get the sense that Milan, because of their lowball offer, offers leave a lot of room for other clubs to step in and kind of hijack the deals. Now, naturally, my true hope is that the negotiators at Milan, the executives that AC Milan hires, are far better negotiators than I am. So we really, at this point in time, don't know what's going to come out of this deal, and maybe they're smart enough where they will be able to pull off the deal at the numbers that are being reported right now. But the point is that we have seen this unfold before. We saw it happen last season with Marcus Thuram. We saw what happened with Mehdi Taremi's deal. We saw this season what happened with Joshua Zirkzee. We're now watching this sort of turn into a pattern where Milan finds these profiles, they complete personal agreements, the news starts to flow out, they don't want to give the price, they don't want to even get close to the price that the selling club is asking for, they leave that room for other clubs to step in and take over the deal, and then they're left saying, well, you know what, we're not going to overpay in this market. But quite honestly, if Monaco was asking for 25 million for Youssouf Fofana, 20 million would not be overpaying for the player. Let's be real, 12 million is underpaying for the player. Just like you're smart enough to wanting to get a deal, the other club is smart enough too in not wanting to get screwed over. So if Milan started the negotiation from a place of maybe 17 million in the offer and then trying to strike a deal around 19 million plus bonuses, stretching it out to about 20 million, you really do assume that this deal could have crossed the finishing line and wouldn't have allowed clubs like Atletico Madrid and Manchester United to step in. And as I said, Daniele Longo's reporting says that this deal can still be done by Milan. So Youssouf Fofana could very much become an AC Milan player at the time if you're watching this video. But this pattern of lowballing and dragging things out for so long, you can't help but feel that this isn't a very good long-term approach. You might get a deal on a few players, but you also risk losing out on some important targets because of your negotiation ways. Now, when it comes to the Fofana profile, I think this is very much real. The only thing that's going to mess up this deal if Manchester United or Atletico Madrid step in and actually pay a higher amount than Milan. Outside of that, it seems pretty clear that the player wants to make a move to Milan, Milan wants the player, but at some point in time, man, they're going to have to pay up the price too. And then there's a Serbian center back in Strahina Pavlovic. Now, the frustrating part that I've noticed about all of these profiles, Pavlovic, Fofana, Lazar Samardzic, the weird part is that it seems like all of these deals can probably be done, or if triggered at the right time, probably could have been done somewhere around that 20 to 24 million price tag. And seeing the budget that Milan had sort of set for the summer mercato, you feel like these profiles were within that budget. If they were ready to go for the release clause for Joshua Zirkzee for 40 million, tells me that at a minimum, they had a mercato budget of 70 to 75 to 80 million. And you get the sense that the signing of Alvaro Morata, Youssouf Fofana, Pavlovic, and Lazar Samardzic, all of that could have been done within that 80 million budget. But what Milan is doing is trying to give these 50% lowball offers, dragging out the negotiation, allowing other clubs to step in and opening up the possibility of losing those profiles and going after their second and third and fourth options. With Pavlovic, there's some good fortune that is coming more so from the player's side than Milan's side. Now, there were reports that Milan had set a contract for the player for about 1.8 million a season. It was being reported that Salzburg wanted to get a deal done around the 30 million mark. Milan were not open to that amount, and there was a possibility of negotiating the price down to 25 million. At this point in time, it still doesn't seem like the price has been brought down and agreement has not been found with the club. But the good thing that has happened is that first of all, I don't understand this. What kind of coincidence is this that after the Youssouf Fofana deal that suddenly saw Atletico Madrid step in, now they're stepping into the Strahina Pavlovic move as well? The one report that has come out, the positive report that has come out, is that Strahina Pavlovic has said a resounding no to Atletico Madrid, and he prioritizes a move to Milan, which makes me a little bit concerned too, because this now means that Milan will now be relying on the player's will to join the club even more so than ever. So only Lord knows what kind of opening bid they're going to be sending to Salzburg, letting them know that, hey, your player wants to join us, so let's try and negotiate a deal around 10 million euros. What do you say? There were news reports suggesting that Newcastle United was looking at the player, Chelsea was also looking at the player, but his priority is to come to Milan. So at this point in time, when it comes to this particular profile, I guess we're going to have to stamp it once again as possible. Clearly, Milan is not moving fast enough or showing an urgency enough that, hey, we want this player to be available to the coach before the preseason starts. Last season, last summer mercato, after the sale of Sandro Tonali, the club moved pretty fast to give the players to Stefano Pioli for the USA Tour. This time around, they're really dragging their heels. But Pavlovic to Milan, I'm going to stamp that as possible for now. And then it comes to Lazar Samardzic. Now, I'll be honest, this deal is also very confusing. Initial reports said that Milan were in contact with his father, who's also his agent. There was a lot of confusion that happened last summer transfer window between his father and his move to Inter Milan. Apparently their commission amounts or some details changed. Eventually that move collapsed because the player was truly offended for his father in that negotiation process with Inter. So you'd hope for a little bit of a revenge situation here, fighting for his father's respect for what happened with Inter. He'd want to join Milan and take that revenge. But the initial report said that Milan was getting in touch with his dad to, see if the player was open to the move, what kind of a contract he would want to agree to. Then some reports came out that said that actually his dad has said that first find a deal with Udinese and then come to us and we'll figure out the details. Then some more conflicting report came out and said that apparently there is an understanding of what his salary and his contract length should be, and his father's commission amount is going to be under 5 million euros. So then that becomes the latest news, that Samardzic's entourage and Milan have a degree of understanding as to what his contract's going to be like, what his contract length and salary are going to be like, and what his father's commission on the deal is going to be like, especially because they don't want to get burnt after what happened with the Joshua Zirkzee situation. But then Udinese's transfer manager comes out and says that yeah, we have been in contact with Milan. We did have a quick chat with them, but there has been no offer and there has been no negotiation for the player yet. And then comes the most recent reporting by a DAZN journalist who comes out and says that Milan did actually make an offer for Samardzic, but it was rejected by Udinese because the initial offer was for about 16 million euros. And considering that the player has a contract with Udinese till 2026, that's not a significant amount. So now some reports are saying that Milan might actually add a profile like Tommaso Pobega to that deal, so Udinese gets a midfielder in the process and also gets cash. Gianluca Di Marzio says that, these deals are close to being completed, including the Strahina Pavlovic move and the Lazar Samardzic move. But at this point in time, when it comes to this profile, I think the only thing that can stamp this as is possible. It can be done, but these negotiations, as we've talked about now, are dragging on for so long. You're really left in a place of limbo where you're just waiting to see what actually happens if another club is going to step in this situation as well and take the player away from Milan's grasp. And then there are the reports of the possible move of Malik Tau to Newcastle United. This interest is now, it seems to be intensifying. There have been some reports of a potential move or an offer from Newcastle United for 30 million euros. Some reports are saying that Milan have potentially agreed to that offer. I don't quite think that has happened. I do think that Milan have set a price tag of Malik Tau around that 40 million euro mark. Keep in mind, this was a signing made, one of the final signings made by Paolo Maldini in his keen eye for being able to find defenders. He found this profile of Malik Tau, paid about maybe 8 million for him. So anything that Milan gets from that 8 million to that 40 million mark, it is at the end of the day pure profit for the club. So for that reason, from a monetary standpoint, I do think this deal can happen. He had a solid first season, but a fairly weaker second season. He also had injury issues in his second season. If they can replace Malik Tau with a more experienced profile, with a more reliable profile in Strahina Pavlovic, I think that's a deal that Milan does. They've also been trying to partner up Fikayo Tomori alongside a left-footed center back who Malik Tau isn't, and that would be someone like Strahina Pavlovic. But I don't think there's much of any possibility for Milan to sell this player for anything less than that 35 to 40 million mark. He has an obvious upside. At the peak of his performances, his valuation was somewhere around 30 million euros. Keeping in mind that he's still only 22 years old and has a contract till 2027, I think it's fair to say that Milan wouldn't be happy with just 30. They probably want somewhere around 40. And keep in mind the Premier League luxury tax. You see a rich club from the Premier League step in and want your player, you're gonna increase your asking price a little bit more. So if Newcastle comes somewhere around 35 to 40 million euros, I do think this deal can happen. I think this is possible. And you guys let me know in the comment section if Milan was to sell Malik Tau, seeing the defensive issues we had last season, 69 goals conceded. Do you think Milan should be thinning out its center back profiles or adding on top of that? And there you have it, Milanisti. Those are some of the profiles we want to take a look at today. I'm in the same boat as you guys. I'm equally frustrated with the management for allowing these deals to get dragged out as much as they have. It's a frustrating process for the fans as well. I don't mind the fact that they're negotiating on prices and not just tossing money around, But I think some of the rates that we've seen them offer to clubs, like an opening bid of 12 million for Fofana, these aren't realistic negotiations. These are not fair prices. And any Milan fan out there that feels frustrated with the management for how they are negotiating on these deals, I'll be honest, I'm with you in that frustration. But still, unfortunately, we do have to keep in mind that there's over a month to go in the transfer window. The true reflection, the true grading of Milan's management's Mercato performance can only be made on August 31st. But until then, we have to try and keep the Milan management on their toes and keep voicing our frustrations with these long, slow, drawn-out processes. But from my side here, I'll keep putting these rumor reel videos out for you. And as always, Forza Milan, grazie mille, ciao tutti. This is the same coach that once walked into a Champions League press conference wearing the Mask of Zorro costume. But one of the biggest questions on the minds of Milan fans is, what are his tactics? What kind of systems does he play with? What kind of formation does he implement? So let's bring out the tactical board and dive right in.